Welcome to Please Me, the podcast bringing you bold conversations and big clit energy. I'm Eve, your host, on a journey from trauma to sexual liberation. Join me and my guests as we dive into conversations around orgasm equality, self-love, body positivity, and essential sexual education. Let's reclaim pleasure and close the orgasm gap, one empowering conversation at a time. Last week, I interviewed Amethysta Herrick, a transgender woman who shared her experience of gender-affirming surgery with me and the world. Living in our true authenticity is absolutely priceless, and I urge you to go back and listen to her inspiring story. You can find my archived episodes on Patreon. I'm excited to share that I'm still in the Fab Over 40 competition and have made it to the quarterfinals. Please follow the link in the show notes to vote for me daily. It's free. If you can, all donations support the National Breast Cancer Foundation, a great cause. Please Me is for mature audiences. Sit back, relax, and surrender to the pleasure of Please Me.
That's my number one thing. If I ever had to boil down what's one thing that could really make a difference, even if you didn't do anything else, that's my favorite thing. My husband and I started to do those when we were dating, and we do them every month.
Hello, and welcome to Please Me, the podcast that aims to destigmatize conversations about sex and sexual health by turning the sheets into our classroom. Today, I am so excited to welcome Elizabeth Polinsky, or Dr. Liz, to the show. She is a marriage counselor and a sex therapist and also a podcaster, and she has a passion for helping military and veteran families. She has training to work with couples with the impact of trauma, combat, sexual trauma, relationship violence, and PTSD. And she is also an EFT practitioner, which stands for Emotionally Focused Couples Therapist. And she works in the categories of affair repair, sexual trauma, and sexual desire discrepancy. And with all of that being said, I want to welcome you to the show, Dr. Liz. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing really great. Thank you for having me on the show. It's always strange to hear people give a blurb about you. But I was like, yeah, I do all those things.
Isn't it
Yeah.
amazing? Like when you hear all of the amazing things that you do, you're like, damn, I am a badass.
Yeah.
And I would definitely put you in that category. So I am so
Thank you.
excited. I'm excited to talk to you. Yeah, we talk a lot about big clit energy on this show and just having that confidence in your sexuality and in your body positivity and all of those things. And when you have a really healthy sex life and you are enjoying multiple orgasms on a regular basis, and you know how to pleasure yourself and you know how to communicate those needs with your partner or partners, and again, having mind-blowing sex, that really does translate to all areas of your life, whether it be your business, your work, your whatever it may be. And so I love talking about big clit energy. And I would definitely say that based on all of the things that you do, you definitely are giving that big clit energy off into the world. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you. I like that. I like that phrase. And I'm thinking this sort of goes right into the work that I do, because I'm thinking that's often what it starts missing. If somebody has gone through the impact of infidelity and betrayal in their relationship, it really does take away that confidence. Or if there is some sort of sexual trauma that they've gone through, that also takes away a sense of confidence. And when it comes to sexual desire discrepancy, the really big thing that can happen for couples is there is this internalized sense of rejection, which really impacts their self-esteem. So I'm thinking this really ties in nicely, because my hope is that maybe everybody would have big clit energy, that they would be able to overcome those, to have confidence and to have a really fulfilling sex life.
Absolutely. And that is why I'm always talking about it. And I'm also always talking about the orgasm gap, because
Yes.
the gap exists in all heterosexual relationships from hookups all the way to marriage and everything in between. And so learning about that is so empowering, and learning how to change it for yourself is even more
Hmm.
empowering, because we all need to do the work to figure out how we can translate what we know works for us to the bedroom and communicating that. And that is what you
Yeah.
do in your practice. So, why don't we jump in, since we already talked about the discrepancy in sexual desire? I'd love for you to define that. It's self explanatory, but define it a
Yeah.
little bit and talk to me about how you help couples in that arena.
Yeah. So at baseline, sexual desire discrepancy is just a difference in sex drives. Like one person would like to have sex more frequently than the other person would like to have it. And that's just so human. Everybody has a different frequency that they would prefer to have sex. And most couples have some sort of sexual desire discrepancy. It's whether they can find ways to navigate that together. The things that I often see with couples that block them. So I think maybe I tend to think like sex is very natural. It's something that is a natural body function, just like breathing. The desire will be there. So what gets in the way of the natural expression of that? And I think that's the realm of marriage counselors, sex therapists, is the emotional blocks that get in the way. And so the most common one is this feeling of being rejected. That and this goes into something you and I were talking a moment ago, right before we joined the show, about communication traps. Because what can happen in a couple relationship, if partner A is really wanting to have sex, they try to initiate. Partner B is just not feeling it that that moment, and then partner A feels totally rejected. Partner A is dealing with all of these self-esteem issues that are getting triggered on the inside, and especially if they struggle with communication already in the relationship, then that might come out in a rather critical way. Or they might totally shut down and pull away and almost give like the silent treatment sort of thing. And then partner B is over here reacting now to, you're either being critical of me or it caused this huge problem that I turned you down. So now it makes me want to have sex even less because it caused this huge thing. And so I might start associating sex with conflict in our relationship and pull away even more from engaging sexually. Or the other thing that I see happen is then the person tries to please partner A. And I heard one of my mentors call it goodwill sex. I'm having sex just so that way you'll be happy, but I'm not really enjoying it, not into it, which for partner A is just going to reinforce those feelings of rejection, and all of the self esteem stuff gets triggered inside. And then they're probably frustrated during sex, and then it just creates even more conflict between the couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how do we get past that? Right. Because
Mm.
I always say, and there's different times of the day for everybody too, right? So for me, like,
Yeah.
I'm not a morning sex person because I have a million things going on in my mind that I have to get accomplished. And so it throws my thought process off. I can't focus on the sex because I'm thinking about, I have to do this, I have to do this, and I have to do that today. And unless I have nothing to do and I'm on vacation, mornings are just not a good time for me. And that's fine as long as I can communicate that to my partner. But I always say scheduling it is a
Yes.
great idea, because everybody is going to be ready for action. Everyone's going to be coming into it prepared mentally and physically. And so, can you like speak on that a little bit? Because I think sometimes people are like, oh, we want to be spontaneous and we want to just go with the
Mm,
flow, but that is not always a natural thing in everyday life. Our lives are busy and we have a lot going on and we have a lot of responsibilities. So, how do we really get to the point where we can really come together intimately on a regular basis so that we can have healthy sex lives?
yes. Yeah, I'm thinking I can talk about this at multiple levels. And so I'm just pondering which one do I start with? But I do love the idea of scheduling sex. So then I start thinking, so why don't people do that? If because that is the natural solution. If we have different times where it would naturally we'd be feeling a higher sex drive, let's schedule it and put it on the calendar and make sure it happens. But a lot of couples don't do it. And I think it's because of two things. One is there are a lot of maybe myths around sex, like ways that our culture has led us to think how sex should be, that we should follow certain scripts for sex, and that it goes in this sort of way based off of the romance movie that we watched, and we have to follow the same outline. You don't really see romance movies that have sex scheduled on the calendar. So it's not a script that people have often learned from media and from society.
Right.
And so there's lots
But
of
if we think
interest.
about the media, if we think about what we see in the media, it's always like penetrative sex and the
Mhm.
male pleasure is being focused on and not the female pleasure. So I say throw all of that out the window and create your own script.
Yes. Yeah. Which is a very vulnerable thing to do. Yeah, I would love it if people could do that. And so the thing that I think then stops them is the vulnerability of it. Of I have to risk doing something that you might not like or that you might judge me for, that I haven't really done myself before. And I think that is what is at the core of a lot of the things for couples where they experience blocks around sex, is that there's a lot of fear to be vulnerable at that level, even just in communicating. I think maybe we should try to schedule sex or communicating about the self esteem or rejection feelings that are coming up. So that way the couple can get sort of reassurance and then find a different time to have sex. But I think it comes down to the vulnerability piece.
I agree. And nobody wants to feel that rejection. It's painful. And then you start thinking, oh, is it me? Is it you start to think negatively about yourself and wonder if it's your, if it's you that's causing the reason why they don't want to have sex. And of course, like you go into this like negative thought pattern in your mind, right? When it's really just whatever's going on with them, possibly. So I do
Yeah.
love the idea of scheduling sex and not necessarily sex as like penetrative sex, but
Right.
intimacy. So if a person is having issues with their sexual health, for instance, I treat erectile dysfunction, I treat painful intercourse, I treat conditions like incontinence that affect sexuality. So
Yeah.
many different things can affect our sexual health, but that doesn't mean that we can't connect on an intimate level. And I love the world of kink, right? And how they really talk about all the details, all of the things that they want to do, all of the things that they don't want to do. So sometimes scheduling maybe like a foot massage together, not necessarily with someone else doing it for us, but doing it for each other, taking care of each other in an intimate way. It doesn't always have to be penetrative sex. It could be
Yeah.
other things that you want to explore, but really opening up those communication pathways. How do you encourage your clients to do that?
Yeah. So there are lots of different types of therapy, couples therapies and individual therapies that could help. Some types of therapy are much more skills based. Let's use I statements and let's practice active listening and things like that. I think the couples that I tend to work with, I think it probably depends on how severe the anxiety is around sex. If it's lower on the lower end of anxiety, people can schedule times, like scheduling sex, schedule a time to talk about things that are going on in your relationship. One of the things I often recommend for clients who are more able to have conversations at home around this would be to have a monthly relationship meeting check-in where they go through all of the components of their relationship, the quality time, household, parenting things, but also sex. And that is a time where they can neutrally check in with each other about changed? Is there something we want to try that's different? Or how is our scheduling sex going between us, and problem solve together around it? For couples who or individuals who have much more anxiety about discussing those things, then we do it in the couple therapy session, because it's like, to build up my confidence, I have to do something. I have to do it over and over again and learn that it's going to be okay that I just did this. And that is what helps build a sense of mastery and self confidence on the inside. So, with the help of the therapist, we talk about and explore the anxiety that comes up around sex and help facilitate the conversations between the couple.
I absolutely love that monthly check in idea because months can fly by and you
Yeah.
are just not connecting, and things can be growing further and further apart, unfortunately. And time flies. So we're
Yes,
already almost in October. I feel like it was just Christmas yesterday. We're gonna get here in a minute again. So yes, absolutely checking in once a month. And you also talk about self care for couples, and I feel like that is
that
a
is.
foundational self-care idea. Can we get
Yeah.
even more ideas around self-care for couples? And that one is a beautiful idea because you're not just checking in with the intimacy part, but you're checking in with all of the areas of your relationship that you want to work and build on. And that's such a beautiful idea.
Yes. Yeah. That's my number one thing. If I ever had to boil down what's one thing that could really make a difference, even if you didn't do anything else, that's my favorite thing. My husband and I started to do those when we were dating, and we do them every month. We've been married. We just had
And
our
this is
5-year
scheduled
anniversary.
too? Is this scheduled too?
This
Do you
is scheduled.
schedule it?
Yeah.
Yes. So do you like go
Yeah.
out on a date and have this conversation, or what do you do to create the space for that?
Yeah. For example, if we had one today, we would probably be at home to talk about all of the things that were going on. We usually block off half a day for it. They don't typically take that long. I think they take maybe in the beginning, or when there were large things we had to plan for. For example, during the time of our wedding and our honeymoon, there were so many logistics. Those meetings took a long time because we would handle that stuff during that time. But they usually take us about an hour to go through. And then after we have, as well as part of that, we will look at our calendars and schedule the next one. So that's built into our meeting agenda. He is in the military, and his schedule can be a little bit unpredictable. So we don't have it like the first Saturday of every month. Although if somebody had a more consistent schedule where a partner was home, they could absolutely do that. But we just compare our calendars and pick the next one. And then afterwards, we do some sort of reconnection activity like a date, and that can really vary. Sometimes that's watching a movie together, sometimes that might be sex, sometimes that might be like going to a festival, or we've gone golfing before. Just all the different variety of things that you could do to reconnect with somebody, so that way, especially if there were hard conversations that happened during that meeting, you still have this way of emotionally reconnecting afterwards and syncing back up together.
And doing something fun together and experiencing something together, I think, is always a great way to connect as well. And for those military families, because you mentioned that you're a military family as well, and you do a lot of your counseling for military families,
Yeah.
what sorts of ideas do you have for people that are having to meet virtually to reconnect? Hey, I have a personal question to ask you. Are you experiencing vaginal dryness? Are you looking for an all natural lube that helps you get the juices flowing? I will give you a tip on what I use. I use Bonnie's Herbals. I use the sex butter for those intimate moments, and I use the boudoir butter for my everyday moisture. And these have been game changers for me. So check out the link in the show notes and get yours today.
Oh, yes. Those are hard. Yeah. There are a few things. There's something that is it's called the Pears Foundation. They do different workshops for couples, and it's a very popular workshop specifically for military and veteran couples. If somebody was in the VA hospital or connected to the Veterans Affairs hospital system, the chaplain program actually provides free warrior to soulmate couples workshops that are based on the pairs curriculum, which I used to help teach back when I worked at the VA hospital. But they cover something called a daily temperature reading, which is like the monthly check-in, but boiled down to a like a 5-minute version of that couples can do every day.
Okay.
If you were long distance, what I recommend to the military couples, especially if they only have email, is that they format their emails using the same template.
Okay.
Um, so let's see if I can remember it here.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
I know that it's covering new information, puzzles. So new information would be like just things that I want to let you know happened today. Oh, the kids went to the dentist today. They said we should think about braces. I don't know, the random stuff that you want to tell your partner. Things that you're puzzled about might be things that you're thinking through. You don't necessarily need feedback on, but you're letting them know. My sister wants to come for Thanksgiving. I'm not quite sure if it's a good idea. I want to think about it. But if they're deployed, if your partner is deployed, they probably don't have much of an opinion about if your sister comes. So that might be something that would be a puzzle.
Okay.
Concerns with recommendations would be things that you like the chance to give your partner feedback where I'm not quite, that might not be as, it would probably depend on what was happening in the email exchange. It could be as simple as I'm concerned about your safety. I hope that you're okay. If I could see myself sending that to my husband if he was deployed. If he was sending one to me, he might say, I'm concerned about the cost of braces. I think we could shop around. He could say something like that in terms of the recommendations. And then wishes, hopes, and dreams would be at the end, which is like our reconnection moment. Let me share with you the things that I appreciate that I'm hoping for us in our future. And it could be like, I hope you get to come home soon, or I hope I get to see you at a port call, or just like I'm hoping our trip goes well over the weekend, whatever it is.
I love that. I,
Yeah.
I love that there's different categories because it really helps you organize all of the things that you want to talk about. And I love the puzzles
Hmm.
category or the puzzled category, because it's something that you want to talk to your partner about, but don't necessarily want feedback. And I love having a
Yeah.
category like that because sometimes you don't want, you just want a listening ear, right? You don't necessarily want your partner to try and figure out all of the issues in your life. You don't want advice. You just want to be able to
Yeah.
share your feelings, share whatever it is that's on your mind, and just have somebody hear you. And so that is such a beautiful thing. And so I'm loving all of these categories. What a great way to check in on a daily basis. And especially when you're so far away from each other, really having
Yeah.
that ability and that sort of outline to get everything in that you want to say. Because, again, time flies, days can
Yeah.
go by. And if you're not checking in, you could really create a distance that you don't want to happen. You put so much investment in time in a relationship, you find the partner that you love and all of that. And then if you don't invest your time and energy into creating an amazing relationship together, it can easily go sour. And yeah, and so based on that, what I just said, one of the questions that I wanted to ask you was, why do you think that love is not enough?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I have thought this way for a long time. And I think whenever I see couples who are really struggling and they choose to divorce, usually they still love each other a lot. Like, it's not that the love is not there, it's that they have really painful communication patterns, that they are getting triggered emotionally by stuff that's happening in the relationship. They're struggling to have coping skills or to work through their own emotional triggers that are coming up. And then they just end up in this pattern of triggering each other back and forth, which is excruciatingly painful when that happens at an emotional level. And outside of that one, the other one that happens is the roommate scenario where they just start avoiding each other, living separate lives, and the connection just erodes over time to where there is not much love left because there's not any interaction between them. But for I'm thinking about I'm thinking about Gottman research right now. The doctors John and Julie Gottman, they do research on couples, and they talk about something called the four horsemen of the apocalypse, which they can watch couples having a 15-minute conversation and predict if they'll divorce based on these indicators, which is if they're being really critical of each other, if they're getting very defensive, if they're stonewalling, shutting down and shutting the other person out, or if they are having a lot of contempt and resentment between the two of them. And when couples struggle with their communication, oftentimes these are the things that they end up doing together. And if one person is critical, the other one is defensive. When the one gets defensive, the other one's more critical, and we just get trapped in this loop. And so then the pain is just so high that couples end up divorcing. And so it's not that they don't love each other. And I wish I could say love is enough. But actually, after the love, is I have to be really intentional to learn communication skills, to learn how to cope with my painful emotions that get triggered, to learn how to be vulnerable and tell you, that really hurt my feelings, what just happened. Or in the case of sex, when you didn't want to have sex with me, I felt like maybe I wasn't attractive. Maybe you're not liking the fact that I have some extra weight these days, something like that. So that way we can have real, authentic conversations and repair them versus just letting tension and conflict grow. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know myself just through my own experience of having been divorced and gone through couples therapy off and on for years that yes, I had love for my partner, for my husband. And it ultimately wasn't enough because we were
Yeah.
not able to work out all of the things that needed to be worked out. And I'm so interested in that research that you were talking about, where in a 15-minute conversation, they can determine whether they think the couple would divorce. That would have saved me years of therapy, right?
Yeah. I think the hope is that the therapy they'll teach you how to do it differently. But yeah.
Right. But the thing is, when you go to therapy, both people in the relationship or whoever's in the relationship, whether it be two or more, right, need to be on the same page with working
Yeah.
through the stuff that you talk about in therapy, right? So it's not
Yes.
just going to a session and having all these great ideas, but implementing them, putting them into practice, and actually communicating, having those difficult conversations and all of that. And if you're not taking the information that you're learning in therapy, which was what was going on in my
Yeah.
relationship, and implementing it into the actual relationship on a daily basis, nothing is going to change. And you
Yeah.
can't change somebody if they don't want to change themselves.
Yes, it is the hardest. It's one of the hardest parts, I think, about couples counseling is you can only take responsibility for yourself. You can only come into the process saying, I'm going to do my best to try to utilize these strategies. And we don't really have control over whether the other partner is willing to do that or not. It can be very hard when you're like, I'm here doing the work. I just want to see that you're going to do the work too. And yeah, that is a common reason why probably why couples divorce as well is because they don't feel like there's equal effort being put
Mm.
into the relationship.
And so
Yeah.
that leads me to the next question, which is, what do you think the number one reason is why marriages fail?
Yeah. I think because they get caught in these communication patterns that
Mhm.
they don't learn to be vulnerable with each other. That if you say something, maybe you didn't even intend it critically, but it hurts my feelings and now I'm defensive. And so I say something mean back to you. and then you feel really hurt. If we just continue in this loop without ever changing it, I think this is the thing that leads us to divorce. Versus if I had just said, oh gosh, that hurt right then. I thought you were criticizing me. Is that what just happened? Instead of approaching it with some curiosity instead, is that what just happened? They can then let me know, oh no, I didn't mean it that way. Like when couples are really in a lot of conflict and all of the emotions are really raw, someone could say, I love you, and it could come out as a criticism. You're saying that you don't mean that's not true. So the more couples can be vulnerable using those communication skills, the more they will be able to find each other emotionally, and the more they'll be able to also navigate any difficult conversations or anxiety that's coming up around sex too.
Absolutely. And I would love to do a little role play with you. Would you be open to that?
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Just tell me
Okay.
my roles. Yeah. What role am I playing?
Okay. So why don't we talk about, for instance, let's pretend that we are an actual couple. Okay.
Okay.
And we are trying to negotiate creating like a healthy sexual meeting. And maybe
Mm,
we have our desire is different, which is really normal in all couples. Not everyone's going to find a partner that has the exact same like desire sexually than the other. So
mhm.
why don't I be the one that has a higher libido?
Okay.
And we're going to talk about how we're going to try and fix that.
Okay.
Okay. Does that sound like a
Yeah.
plan?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, action. Hey, Liz, what are you doing right now?
I've got the dishes to do, and then I was thinking I would do the laundry after that and then get started on dinner.
Oh, okay. What's for dinner tonight?
I was thinking we would do spaghetti.
Spaghetti.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good to me. Listen, I am feeling a little bit turned on right now. I'm wondering if you can take a little break and come join me up in the bedroom.
I'm feeling pretty stressed with this, like everything that we've got to get done today. I really don't have time to do it tomorrow. The kids need to have clean clothes to go to school. So if we could um, maybe schedule it for a later time, that would be helpful for me.
Okay. So, when are you thinking? Because today would be fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Can we touch base after dinner? And maybe what would be helpful is if you handled doing the dishes and if you could handle the kids' bedtime, then that would give me a little bit of time to de stress and help get myself into the mood.
I love this. Okay. Because, yes, absolutely. We can end scene, right?
Yeah. And clean. Okay.
End scene. Absolutely. Because you are overwhelmed with all of the multiple things that need to get done, and you can't focus on sensuality right now. However, you can delegate some
Hmm.
of the things that need to get done so that you can get into that mind space.
Yeah.
And so that is a beautiful thing to ask your partner for help when you need it. And also, it's going to help your partner because then they're going to also get what they want, which is to be intimate with you. So that was a beautiful role play, and I appreciate you playing along.
Happy to role play. So, yeah.
Yes. In the past, we've always talked about what sexual things you bring to the bedroom. And this season, we're going to be doing role plays. And so that was a lot of fun. And I think a great example of how people can really get what they want, but with some negotiation.
Yeah.
It's not always like when you want something, you're going to get it immediately.
Yes.
You have to go back and forth, negotiate and communicate and figure those things out in relationships. So thank you so much
Yeah.
for being open to doing that with me. I want to make sure that my listeners can find you and also tell us the name of your podcast.
Yes, yeah. So my podcast is called the Communicate and Connect Podcast for Military Relationships. It really is focused on helping military couples navigate having strong relationships despite the challenges of military life. We also have a group therapy practice headquartered in Virginia Beach, Virginia, where we do counseling, couples counseling, individual counseling, family therapy, really tailored to helping improve relationships for military and veteran couples. So you can check out our services and the podcast at communicateandconnect.com.
And there is the website right there. So
Yeah.
check that out and look for her there. And I just want to thank you for being on the show today. And I want to ask all of my listeners that if you listen to this episode and you loved it as much as I do, grab your phone right now and click the copy link and share it with somebody that you think could relate to the show today, because we could all be spreading the word and helping each other. And also, please leave reviews. That is how podcasts grow. And I just want to say one more thing. One of the things that I gave up during COVID was wearing a bra, and I have been using cakes. And so, again, people, get your cakes, okay? So, I just want to make sure that people can find me as well. You can go to pleaseme.online. And my shows are all up there. I have a beautiful curated list of sex toys, lubes, and more on there. And all of my shameless interviews are there from all of the shows that I've been on and my webinars. So be sure to go and check my website out as well. So with that being said, until next time, for ad-free listening, exclusive bonus episodes, Eve's library of archived webinars, and early access to new releases of Please Me, become a monthly supporter on Patreon. Simply open the Patreon app on your phone, search for Please Me, and subscribe today for premium content and more. Cheers to finding your pleasure and big lit energy.